Hello friends, today we are traveling back to the year 2011, mid-August. The Bay 12 forums are the home of players of the video game Dwarf Fortress, and at the time was composed entirely of ASCII characters. It looked something like this. These dwarves have children, and at the time it took many years in-game for them to become useful, and do anything outside of simply wander around, start fights, vomit on the floor, and consume your food. So Girl in Hat would like to propose a solution on how to take care of these children and make them a little bit more useful. I would like to warn you though, for those of you who are faint of heart, you might find some of the content of this video disturbing, because what follows is a sudden and deep dive into absolute depravity, isolation, imprisonment, and genetic modification of child super soldiers. August 13th, 2011, 9:15 p.m. It's like regular childcare, but with more dogs and less care. The idea is simple, but will take some finesse to perform. Construct a box. It should be 3x3, leaving one tile center free. The walls should be wall grates, and corners should be actual wall. Alternatively, perhaps, ideally, the center tile could be a floor grate, and not a hatch. Place a child into the box. Creative abuse of levers, wall deconstructions, and hatches can be used. Place 12 years worth of dwarven syrup roast of the highest quality and assorted booze into the box by dumping it onto the roof and then opening the roof via a lever, causing the items to fall down. For this reason, the floor would need to be solid to accommodate a food stockpile. Place a female dog in the box and then wait 12 years to unleash disaster. And Girl in Hat elaborates. The premise is fairly simple. The animals enclosed in a tight space will lash out randomly, often attacking a dwarf in the same tile. This extends over time to create a biological danger room, where the dwarven children are subjected to 12 years of constant dog biting, scratching, and watching the dogs kill each other, quickly leveling up the child to legendary dodger, and perhaps wrestler, kicker, and or biter, if the dwarf manages to counterattack. Not sure if a dwarf will counterattack, but that's the plan. The child will eat the food from the floor that he's been staring at for the past 12 years, and will ideally be comforted by some lovely mist falling right beside him. Once the years have passed, and the child grows into a scarred, hardened, tough as steel dwarf, don't forget agility and endurance, who doesn't care about anything. Or keep the lid closed, throw in a weapon and shield, and replace the dogs with goblins. The only issue is trying to get the child to survive without going berserk. But then, again, that might turn into training for the other caged children. And of course, they're looking for design ideas or implementation, and unleash these ideas upon the community. And the obvious responses ensue. Some are disturbed, and some simply think it's hilarious. Of course, there's suggestions to simply create Batman, and the repeated terminology keeps coming up. Danger room, but in this case, danger room for babies. What is a danger room, you ask? Well, it was a form of training in the early days of Dwarf Fortress, before the developers thought it would be wise to add non-lethal attacks to training, making it so that you no longer needed to specify between training weapons and weapons for actual combat. Danger rooms comprised of a bunch of dangerous traps that would automatically trigger when a dwarf was in the space, causing them to dodge the traps and level up skills at significantly higher rates than the game was intended to complete. In the modern game, danger rooms are pretty moot, because training is almost always faster than the more artificial manufactured varieties. But they do still work in some cases. But in more modern testing, it's much more likely that you'll be training your doctors due to the missing limbs that your dwarves will receive upon standing in a danger room while at lower skills. But the dwarven childcare thread was only just getting started, and the community was about to unleash many ideas, delving down a deep, dark descent. But there were questions. Wait, won't the dogs kill the children? Also, quick question, does it work with babies? And won't they die from infection? Babies would starve to death, you see, because no mother to leech the nutrients off of. It's an interesting way to say nursing. And thankfully, Girl in Hat seems to have many answers to their questions. The biggest issue seems to be size. A 1x1 room would allow for maximum child discretion, but a larger room allows for more utilities, like a well or a nest box. Some chickens would allow for light damage and maximum dodge, but a good dog would allow for maximum damage and heavy scarring. So whichever works, the animal choice will need some fine-tuning. A certain amount of damage to the child is not only expected but encouraged. If the child survives the dog bites, it will be very quick to heal and super dwarvenly tough. If it's getting bat by chicken feathers, then it will just develop a deep-seated comfort. Screw that. Release the dogs. Breed some cheetah. Ferry in the carp. Mod the carp to be flying magma carp that spit out badgers. And with that, the thread continues, with your normal dwarfy compliments. Many people call the thread evil, but also have curious, grim questions of their own. And others, while agreeing it's evil, think it's a good thing, and probably should be examined as much as possible to see how effective it can possibly be. Many bring their own ideas, and the fittingly named Dr. Monarch has some more important details. When a mother gives birth in our fortress, the guards come and take the child away. The mother may protest, but the child no longer belongs to her, but the fortress. The child is placed alone in a pit filled with crazed animals, along with food and drink fit for a king. Every few years, the invigorer is powered. Searing flames purge their bodies of all weakness, and only the truly worthy live through the trials. At the dawn of the 12th year, that the child has been in the chamber, the grates are opened, and a single burnt, sociopathic killing machine is released into the fortress. They are led to their private barracks, where they take their rightful place as an elite warrior of fable. Weapons fit for gods themselves are forged in their name. Armor is not necessary, for no weapon can pierce their skin. They are the first and last line of defense. They are the children of God of Blood, Armok. And with that, the science can begin. The first experiments were carried out by forum user IC77, and you see, they failed to read the instructions, and so their results were rather flawed. I tried this with an orphan and a trio of wolves. It didn't end well. I did not know they would gang up on the poor kid. But, just like any good form of science, they checked his work. Tame or wild wolves was the question. Immediately, IC knew what his fault was. Wild. Well, crap, he writes. I think we all know the problem there. Obviously, they need to be tame wolves to simply fight because their personal space is being invaded and not fight because they're wild animals. We must reset. We can do better. Especially because, as Max writes, Dwarf Fortress, the only game where placing children with wolves is a feat of science. I would argue it is in real life as well. However, we probably can deduce the result without having to do live experiments. But as Flair states, I couldn't agree more with this sentence, and I'm sure we're going to need this screenshot more than once in this video. Runs off to alert the authorities. If you ever witnessed this happening in real life, I would do the same. But thankfully, this is a video game, comprised of pixel representations of living intelligent beings. The first series of successful experiments were conducted by forum user Umil, and they begin with this statement. I made a test for the kids' chamber in my current fort, but it is a grown fortress with some lag issues, so I don't foresee making the project in full force in here. So I'm going to make a new fort to try it, but I'm stuck getting galena as my only ore, and that I can't allow. I don't want to get all my iron from trading. And they acquired their test subjects. 3 of them, in fact. But unfortunately, they were a bit older than they wanted. Instead of being 1 year old, they were 6 to 5 years old. So at least I will see the results quicker. And after a few months, they have some notes. Subject A hasn't been bitten once. A chamber of 2x3 is useless for this experiment. Subject B, neither has been bitten. Dogs seem comfortable in a 3x1 space with a dwarven child. I tried entering more dogs into the chambers, but my dwarves refuse to do so. The zone is accessible, there are no burrow restrictions, but yet the pit animal work is listed as inactive, and no one takes it. Any ideas? Subject C has been bitten 3 times in a couple of months. 2x1 chamber size seems correct to provoke the dogs to fight. The child doesn't defend itself. No dodge, no block, not even a punch in the logs. But well, this is just the start. I want to add more dogs to the pits, but the dwarves are not putting them there. I'll try the war dogs now. Subject A was released. The chamber is too big to be useful, and I need the dogs. I retook all the dogs I could in the fortress to retry the experiment. Exceptions were Subject B and Subject C chambers, which remain sealed behind iron bridges. 3 new chambers were built, another 2x1 chamber, and 2 1x1 chambers. 2 new subjects were put in the 1x1 chambers. I still have to name them. I tried to put dogs in the new chambers, but my dwarves still don't want to do it. They have animal hunting, animal care, and other labors to do a pasture full of dogs just at the turn of the corner. And the only thing they dropped in the pit was some puppies and a war dog. I have queued like 15 dogs, but no one puts them in the pit. Subject C is showing progress and is gaining skill as an armor user, as well as dodging and fighting skills. Subject C also bears a lot of scars, so this part is at least promising. The only thing, why won't the dwarves pit the dogs? What they mean when they say pit the dogs is place more dogs into the chamber. Throw them through the hatch at the surface. It's beginning to become a bit of a problem. Subject C has died, and the dwarves still don't want to pit the damn dogs. I'm so done with the experiment. In the current fort, I will construct a new one for the test as soon as I find a suitable spot. Iron ore, magma, and a water source. Some trees. You know, the basic stuff. Clearly seeking more funding to construct a proper base to commit Dwarf Fortress MK Ultra experiments. And thankfully, the fellow scientists on the forums have some notes. You should check the passive stats of the dwarves, those that do not change, fast to heal, etc., and record them. There will be a high death rate among the kids, but those that survive will be amazing. And some people have different types of feedback, such as Edrin here, who writes about healing. I think I know a fix for the death toll rate. For those with passive healing traits, let them fight for their lives. They can live through it. But the average dwarven child can have 1 physician visit per month, and slow healers will receive 2. But ISGC disagrees. I'd rather weed out the weak ones and reuse the cell. Perhaps a visit from the doctor after a year to stop the potentially deadly injuries, such as infections, as well as to get rid of those who never get up from the hospital bed and are functionally useless. My guess would be, if you are going to give them regular doctor visits, you'd get 1 super dwarf per every 20 to 25 kids, taking into account the burninating and whatever other sick experiments geared towards morally and physically ossifying the child. However, that super dwarf is going to be amazingly kick-ass. And this is where our young scientists seem to be encountering an impasse. I want a simpler idea. Make 4 beds, put subjects in, put in a restraint with the hen, put in the nest box, lock the door, drop in food, but unfortunately I'm unsure of how well it will preserve. The food sorta didn't land where I intended. Oh well, they'll find some way to live. Turns out, automating torture for super soldiers isn't that effective. But our self-described, stubborn, bearded, booze-smelling, mean little dwarf has continued posting. Welcome back, UMIL. Subject B is a complete failure. No skill grow, no fights, just a boy and his dogs. He'll leave the chamber closed and will not resupply it. Maybe hunger and despair will create something salvageable. And they've acquired 4 new test subjects and reused Chamber C. The dogs had stayed inside, so all they had to do was put another child in there. By the way, they write, there is no trace of Subject C. I think the dogs ate him. Maybe it wasn't the best idea to put another child in there. What am I saying? If the dogs tasted dwarf flesh and liked it, the better. It will make the following test subjects more eager to cooperate. The new chambers are 1 by 1, and it seems there is a pit limit of 5 animals, but that's fine. 5 is good enough to start fights and scar the child, and yeah, they increase soldier skills. Fighter, dodger, and armor user. And I like the lovely decoration work that the dogs do. Blood red is never quite out of fashion. The tests were successful, and our scientist is pleased. Making the child enter the chamber is actually easier than I believed at first. Just make a burrow and assign all of your adult dwarves and childs you do not want to be part of the project, and order a constructed wall inside of the chamber to be deconstructed. And because all of your adults are burrowed, a child will take the labor, and then use the method of your preference to lock them in. You can use a hatch to an interfer level, a water slide, a catapult, or do it as I do, iron bridges. And with that post, UMIL lets some time pass, a year to be specific, and returns to the scientists with some results. Subject A was freed and is living a normal dwarf life. Chamber model Alpha, 2x3 with a bed, is a complete failure. Sadly, I didn't install a magma cleanup device, and I needed the dogs, so he was lucky, till I decide to test the Iron Danger Room. Subject B is still alive, some fights with the dogs, and he is gaining skills, but at a really slow rate. He'll stay in the chamber. Subject C has died, and was eaten by the dogs, or at least that's what the scientists thought when the body couldn't be found. Of the new test subjects, 1 couldn't take it anymore and went berserk after 3 months. The dogs tore him apart. The other 2 are still alive, but skill gain is slow. Maybe the dogs are hurt. Their happiness is stable thanks to the legendary roasts and booze. I'll try to pit a new dog into their chambers to see if it can be solved. We are constructing a new set of chambers as well, 7 of them, 2 by 1, in space and size, with masterpiece beds and engraved walls. 3 of them are already occupied and are being supplied. If the 2x1 size doesn't work, the other 4 will be reduced down to 1x1. Let's see where this will take us. I want to make sure that the children can survive and win skills at a reasonable rate before step 2, the design of ritual fire. I should elaborate on ritual fire for a second. There's been a long-known theory in Dwarf Fortress that dwarves are not very flammable, but their skin is very viscous and easily meltable. If a dwarf is momentarily set on fire, their fat melts, draining out of their body, and their skin becomes hardened tissue, making them significantly stronger if you're able to put the fire out. Thus, describing setting the children on fire to seal up the wounds, burn out the fat, and increase their stats in agility and resistance to physical damage. If you want a video on how to do that in the modern game, I'll stick one in the description somewhere. Some of the fellow scientists in the thread have some feedback for Yumil's work. If you designate a 1x1 meeting zone in those larger pits, the dogs should crowd the zone, and you should get similar results. If you check your inventory screen and you made note of the original subject C, you can probably find their remains in a stockpile or a coffin. In some respects, Yumil seemed to ignore the feedback and continued with the science. The 2nd generation subjects show steady progression in their skills and bear so many scars on all parts of their body in just 1 year of 10. The 2nd generation is currently 2 years old. Their favorite subject is Dishmab Post-Sieges, who reached Novice Dodger last month and shows steady progress in other areas. The other test subjects are slower, but kicking. Sadly, one of the test subjects didn't make it. He got a bleeding wound. I thought that it would heal, but it didn't. And then when it reached severe blood loss, I made an exception and let him out so that the emergency services could apply medical treatment, because he was the 2nd best of our experiments. He made it to the hospital, got cleaned. We were out of soap. Some foul-smelling hauler wasted it on their armpits. But unfortunately, he died because of infection just shortly after. The 3rd generation of test subjects are showing slow progress. As always, for the first couple of months. The dogs get rabid when some time passes for being incarcerated for too long, but I think one of them lost an eye to a dog. In place of the 2nd generation subjects, I put in a new child. The already rabid dogs are not letting him be in peace, so skill gain was instant. But we have a new problem. I'm out of dogs. The ones in the chambers are really hurt and started to die. Maybe I'll let the dog density per chamber be lowered. As Chamber 8 has shown us, a couple of rabid dogs can do the work of 5 or 6 healthy tame ones. But what is this? One of our caretakers just rushed in, telling me that Dishmab is having some moderate blood loss. I can't let my favorite subject die, so I'm going to have to give him medical attention. He's earned it. And as Yumil scampers off to tend to their favorite dwarf, Dwarfinator has an important question and a concern. Having dogs or other animals seems to not work very fast. I think a similar setup with upright spikes and pressure plates would probably do the job faster. But Edrin would like to clarify. The job of killing them? Well, absolutely. But currently, even with dogs, we're facing severe setbacks, as can be seen from the test subjects. The wounds being taken are more than enough from mere dogs. Anything more and you might kill the kids before they have the chance to mature. But just like any project of this scale, the science must continue. So questions are still necessary. Time for another report on Project Cerberus. After some pints of dwarven ale, the name was decided. It was a stupid bet. Let's just say you can't kiss a giant badger and keep your face. Dishmab died, along with the head doctor. As I said, I let him out for a medical checkup. He made it to the hospital and got diagnosed and was given some wound dressings. But before returning to his chamber, he did it himself. I was amazed by his spirit. A little guy, full of scars, missing a toe and half of his ear, just 3 years old, looking at me, straight into the eyes, his gaze so full of fire, burning hotter than magma, and saying, "Send me back." I agreed and put him back into the chamber. A month passes, and his health was deteriorating, so I let him out again. And again he walked by himself to the hospital to get another dressing, and was dismissed. He walked right back to his chamber, visibly fighting an infection. I, myself, accompanied him to the deeps. As he walked to the chamber, and the iron gates were closing, he looked back at me smiling, and said, "I'm off to see my brother." I didn't understand that at first. He died moments after. The unnamed second-generation subjects that died a year ago was his brother. He knew all along he would die. I'm somewhat disturbed by that. But it explained his eagerness to return to the chamber. But No matter. The fortress is out of dogs. We have some breeding pairs, but they are mascots, and I'm not willing to risk those. Many dogs have died, and I can't risk more. But even with these setbacks, the project must go on. The last second-generation child reached Novice Dodger today, so the experiment is still hopeful for that batch. The third generation are developing too. I like Subject 3-4. He's learning to dodge twice as fast as the other subjects. With just 2 dogs, few rabid animals are significantly more effective. For the 2 new subject, since we ran out of dogs, we used birds. I'll have to think of a name for those birds. I'm going to have some booze. Having finished the entry, Edren has some flattery. Excellent work. Continue with experimentation. Now, if only there was some way to cool molten steel directly onto their skin. Yumil has finished their booze break and continues. The head doctor took a fun ride in the water slide to a candy spear. I'm glad he survived for a couple of months with almost every organ in his body broken. As for Project Cerberus, children training with dogs, and the sister project, birds, which is yet to be named, Tartarus-type chambers have proven more effective in the developing of test subjects. The 1x1 space provides a faster rate of learning with fewer animals. In fact, 2 dogs are doing the same work of 5 in a shorter time. I'm preparing new chambers, Tartarus-type for the further research. Elysium-type chambers provide solid results and are far better at keeping subjects happy with engraved walls, floors, and a masterwork bed. And the third generation is beginning to look promising, although subject Cerberus 3-4, C34, is rapidly raising and hasn't received any type of great wound. The rest of the third generation is also steadily showing progress. Subjects C31 to C35 are stable. The bird childs are not that bad either. Development is slower, but also sure. The children with the birds have no wounds, proving they are safer. There are 2 Elysium-type chambers, empty, and the peahen just hatched more Keats. It's time for more science. So, based on these results, more dogs give more danger, and less skill development. I've set up tests for a slightly larger chamber, using cats and birds. We'll see how it plays out. Reading through these posts in real time, only a couple of days have passed, but it's been quite some time for Yumil and their fortress. This has been a hard period, Yumil writes. Most of the third generation subjects are letting themselves die. It all started with Bird Boy 1. The subject didn't get any sleep in a very long time. Maybe he wanted a bed? And after that, he also stopped eating and drinking. A few days after that, he was declared mad, as soon as he began spouting some nonsense about elves dancing with dwarves. I think I'm glad that we're going to lose this one. C35, the newest subject, was next. When she was sent to the chamber, she cried a lot, more so than any other subject. And the crying didn't stop for a good long time. When she finally settled down, we thought that everything was going to be fine. But she wasn't eating or sleeping at all. Not so long later, we found her writing on the walls of the chamber with her own blood, letting the dogs bite her to drown it. She was declared melancholic the following day. And the rest of the third generation subjects are unfortunately developing the same problems. They don't eat, sleep, or drink, even when their status shows clear drowsiness, hunger, and thirst. The High Command is deliberating on whether to watch how long this thing goes or pull the plug and let the subjects out. And to make matters worse, after the second generation deaths and the first deaths of the third generation, we were sure that the problem lied in the reduced space of the Tartarus chamber. But we were proven wrong when the subjects in the Elysian chambers started to show the same symptoms. It didn't matter if they had more floor space. It didn't matter if they had furniture. They were going insane. It's possible the science itself is flawed, but we must continue. There is a dozen dogs in the main hall. Why aren't these pastured or pitted? Why don't they even appear in the animals report? Why are the birds not getting pitted too? We have 2 new subjects awaiting implementation of animals, but no one does it. The subjects are letting themselves die, and the dwarves don't want to even touch the animals. Do they feel guilt over the dead test subjects? Do they not want to take part in our questionable projects? Maybe I should pit them all on the fun slide and send them straight to the underworld and flood the fortress with magma. But alas, we need the resources of the fortress. It is well defended, it's well supplied, and has enough dwarf power. Many times, the thought has crossed my mind of sailing off to another land to build a true lab, but I and my team have grown so attached to to the fortress of Dragonmouth. I will save this project. If the little guys want to die, then so be it. There have been a lot of births this year, which has brought new test subjects. And at this point in my head, Edrin is Yumil's assistant. Darn it! These tests are not going well then. We'll have to do some additional testing for padding against the insanity. And Yumil seems to agree. I'm still baffled by the way the dwarves refuse to pit the animals. Because of that, new chambers are still empty, and new test subjects are still awaiting. I told them many times to gather up the dogs, or at least count them, or to chase the birds and put them in a cage near the lab. But the laborers just look back and say, nah, we don't want to do it. But even without the support of the workforce, we were able to get 2 new test subjects. Reusing some of the chambers. Subject Cerberus 4-1 got one of the first 3 chambers. The one belonging to Subject C and Subject Birdboy 3-1 got Elysium Chamber number 6. Cerberus Project 3rd generation subjects, if they live to see the battlefield, I want a front row seat to see them fight. They don't fear death. They call her by many names. They don't eat until they are about to faint. They don't drink till their last drop of blood is spilled and let themselves fall in exhaustion before sleeping. And somehow they've managed to keep the mental stability of a dwarf. Fine. Nothing less, nothing more. The only side effect is that I have to keep close watch on them to avoid them overdoing it. And I thought Subject C was near a star. Bah! And that dishmab was really good. There is not comparison. These ones are the new stars of the project. And if I ever resolve the animal strike and can make new chambers, I want the next subjects to be just like them. The new bird boys, B21 and B22, don't show any progress at all, but they're new yet. Maybe some more months. And we'll have some results. But really, birds are slower. The testing will continue. Test subject, Cerberus 34, also called Test 4, of Subject C34, is the poster girl for the project. She has the highest stats and skills out of everybody, and she was the first one to also snap out of the not eating, sleeping, or drinking nonsense. Things are looking well. I hope for the next report to be good. And I'm told that misgenerators can be murder to space reality continuums. I feel compelled to try. Lab assistant Edrin has taken some matters into his own hands and is beginning his own experiments. I have begun a prototype testing chamber for now. The moving parts, such as floodgates and water, and such will not be implemented. This was mostly due to the surprise of 2 child immigrants I got in the spring, forcing me to rush to complete a chamber. Currently, I have the 2 following improvements to the chamber. There is now a bridge over the chamber. This is not only to drop in food supplies if those become dangerously low, but is also there in case I need to drop in more animals. I have made a downstairs department in front of the bridge gate, where the food is stored at the beginning of the project. Initially, I was fearful the chambers wouldn't be nearly enough to suit my needs, but the children have proved me wrong. Extremely wrong. They are in moods ranging from ecstatic to happy. There's only 2 of them right now, and they actually seem to prefer it in the chambers, as opposed to out of them. Their skills are taking a while to grow. They are both still in the dabbling state, but the original boy, Monom, has reached 32% towards the next skill level. I have high hopes. It has not been a full year yet, but it is coming close. I do not like the results. They are not nearly astounding as I had originally hoped. However, the second boy, to be placed in, Monom's brother, has already taken advantage of the training perfections I made. He has only been in for half a year and yet already shows the growth that his brother has given us. Once again, we have high hopes. Neither are anywhere near insane, and both are in adequate condition to continue the training. And Edrin attaches a few notes from one of the children, something they scribbled on a piece of paper and passed through the window. I haven't seen my parents in nearly a year. I can't move my foot in any direction. I spend all my days being attacked by animals, and I've been forced to drink sheep puke. But I was near a fine grate, and that makes me happy. If I average the skill increase rate for the new pods, writes Edrin, it would come in at about 1 for every year and 3/4. This is with chickens. I believe that if we were to use something slightly more vicious, a cat, perhaps, we could get better results. Perhaps a skill increase every year. With a dog, that could be further increased. However, currently, there have been 0 losses, and no wounds beyond bruising. I have, however, lost several chickens to the children's counterattacks, and what's more is they seem to have learned some trick from escaping the cells. Our scientists are checking for flaws now, but supposedly it should be impossible to get in or out without using the proper levers. Even having said that, we have 2 new promising candidates, both currently at the baby stage. They won't be ready to be weaponized for about a year or so. I plan on giving them Athens-class pods, the new name I have dubbed to those creations, with an upgraded pet for training. I think 3 cats should be optimal. If this works out, the space will be reduced by 1, keeping the number of animals, as this may optimize the spacing and allow for the children to gain the most amount of training in the shortest amount of time. But there is some good news. Manom, the first of the test subjects, has reached Novice Dodger and will soon be followed in Fighter. This means that overall, his progression will at least allow him to be about a 3rd to 4th tier by the time he reaches adult, possibly meaning that he will only have to spend a year in the danger room training. Having read those posts from scientist Edrin, there was a break in his additions to science. But Monk 12 has taken up the torch. And with that, we conclude the reports from the young scientist and lab assistant Edrin. Moving on to Monk 12, who has opened yet another testing facility, making dwarven super soldiers. And with that, the research of Emil comes to a close, alongside of Edren's. They made quite substantial progress, keeping subjects in their testing confinements for multiple years, and built up some relatively significant skills amongst the children. Of course, there were failures, but their tests would be the inspiration for more dwarven scientists. After some brief initial questioning, Monk 12 has entered the thread. It is the 20th of Galen in the year 314 in their perspective universe. The Dwarven Childcare Program has begun in Drunken Steels. The subject, codenamed Spartan 1, has been placed into a 3x3 engraved bedroom. The room contains 4 Masterwork brass statues, a Masterwork silver nest box, Masterwork iron throne and table, and a Masterwork bloodthorn bed. An empty space for food. In all, there are 3 places to stand in the room: the chair, the bed, and the stockpile. Whether this is too many is yet to be determined. Spartan 1 was guided to the room by the simple expedient of assigning the room as his bedroom, then locking the Masterwork bronze door behind him when he went there. A mason has been ordered to seal the room off from the outside world with an orthoclase block, so that if the door is destroyed in the case of tantruming, containment will not be lost. You see, Spartan 1 was selected for the program at the age of 4. She is a naive daughter of Drunken Steels, born in the cramped, fetid dining hall on the surface. She was very weak and very quick to tire. Due to her age, she had already accumulated 37 friends and 3 grudges, and was born into a large family of 7, although one of her siblings was kidnapped by goblins the preceding year. In many ways, Spartan 1 is unsuitable for the program, and indeed, military life in general. She was chosen for one purpose. She has already made an artifact. Spartan 1 does have some redeeming traits. She has very good sense of position of her own body. She can handle stress. She is an ardent worshipper of 2 different gods, which may give her some comfort in the times to come, and she has a shortage of patience and is quick to anger, which may help her survive the chamber. Her parents are masons, and unlikely to find themselves in harm's way. In all, she was destined for life as a useless peasant. We shall attempt to make her something more. Spartan 1's good mood, entering the chamber, was ecstatic. Although she is troubled by the recent death of another dwarf, she finds the opulent conditions of the chamber to be like a personal palace. She enjoyed speaking with her mother, and that's a thought that she will not have for quite some time. She enjoyed dining in a legendary dining room on the surface, and with luck, she will find the dining conditions here equally satisfactory. She enjoyed a truly decadent drink lately. Strawberry wine is her favorite, and she shall be supplied with all she can quaff through the surface hatch, as well as masterwork roasts and the odd fisherberry. A turkey, a hen, and gobbler have been introduced to the chamber. The female immediately took up residence in the nest box and laid a clutch of 12 eggs. The male will help overcrowd the chamber once the poults hatch. Further turkey breeding programs are underway on the surface to provide fresh fodder for the chamber. Status reports shall be filled out at the start of each season and more frequently as needed. Some months have passed, and it is now the 1st of Limestone 314. Autumn has arrived, but so soon after the last update, little has changed. A party was broken up on the surface so the dwarf could be bothered to throw down some wine to the girl. As expected, moving into the central stockpile space to retrieve the booze caused her to crowd the gobbler for a time until it fluttered onto her bed. No poults have hatched yet, so the conditioning has not yet begun. A minor interest is that the fact that the Countess of Drunken Steels held her meeting with the human lawgiver outside of Spartan 1's chamber. The Countess has been utterly traumatized by the extravagant sleeping arrangements given to Spartan 1 and cannot be reasoned with. Hopefully, this will not have a detrimental effect on the project. Jealousy is quite the sadistic killer, after all. Unexpectedly, the ghost of a hammer dwarf has taken to haunting Spartan 1. When asking why this ghost persists when there are available coffins, the overseer explained that this hammer dwarf died in the early years of Drunken Steels by falling into a murky pool, and his body was never recovered. Stone crafters are busy at work, engraving a slab for poor Aban, the restless haunt, but this is a sober reminder that the subjects will never be truly isolated as long as ghosts trouble the fortress. Also, unexpectedly, Spartan 1 is currently asleep on the floor. Presumably, this is because the turkey gobbler is occupying the bed, and the child lacks the strength or will, either or, to move him. There do not appear to be any negative thoughts as a result, but this situation should be carefully monitored. An inspection of Spartan 1's inventory reveals that not only is she naked, but she is covered in blood and dirt, sheep's blood. For the most part, as well as the blood of Servesh Trumpet Hearts, the Gilded Monk of Color, an axe dwarf. Presumably, this coating of filth comes from playing around the hospital well. A quick inspection of the other children in Drunken Steels reveals that they also have similar coating of blood and diorite dust. It is currently unknown if any children will wash themselves of their own volition. I have certainly never seen it before, but if they do, then a well and a bar of soap would be recommended for future chamber designs, as the pleasure of a soapy bath may help the madness in the subject. Not unexpectedly, the poults have not yet hatched. It has only been a couple of months. After all, such conditioning has not yet begun. The mayor demands that the pace of the project be increased by introducing all available gobblers to the chamber, but the Countess has countermined him, citing the need for prudence. Although I agree that we should show caution in the treatment of the children of Drunken Steels, I admit that some anxiety about the slow progress of the project. Last month, another child was taken by the goblins. Every day we do not get results from Spartan 1s means another day before the construction of additional chambers can begin in earnest. If we take too long to complete these chambers, I fear we will not have any subjects to raise them. Autumn approaches, and Spartan 1 has been observed climbing atop both her table as well as the nest box. Therefore, I must consider this chamber to have a full 5 tiles of standing space. Thus, I have decided to exert my power as attendant physician to override the Countess and introduce 2 peacocks and 3 turkey gobblers to the chamber. With luck, this will start the conditioning process even before the poults hatch. The Countess did not take the news well. Already in a fragile state of mind, she struck the legendary clother in a fit of rage, killing him instantly. Worse, a great hairy flatworm wriggled up from the depths, spewing dust and killing several soldiers. One of the survivors tantrumed, kicking the metalsmith down the mine shaft. I have much work to do treating the injured, but my professional diagnosis of the mental health of Drunken Steels is, well, not good. Not good at all. We are on the verge of destroying ourselves. I will continue to update this journal so that in the event of my death, my successor may continue the childcare project. May Zephon have mercy on our souls. Winter has begun in the year 314. The deadly dust of the forgotten beast causes the entire body to swell and rot like a fruit left in the sun. Thanks to the extensive surgery on my part, no victims have died as a result of the rot. Unfortunately, the healing process takes time, and the goblins are at the gates now. The dwarven caravan guards put up a good showing, and the single hale axe dwarf repelled the squad of swords goblins by himself. But even so, the casualties were great. The mayor died in the fighting, and the countess went mad with grief before intercepting a goblin's arrow. The new mayor of Drunken Steels is none other than the mother of Spartan 1. Her only daughter, she appointed me militia captain of the laborious Seeds, with no subordinates. She says I will need the armor and axe to survive the coming tantrum spiral. I know the truth of her words, but I cannot leave my charges to suffer in the hospital. I will equip myself after they are treated. Spartan 1, on the other hand, is miserable. Although she loves her confines, her food and her drink, she is greatly upset by the many deaths of dwarves she knew before the chamber. I knew this was a risk, given her age, but I did not expect it to have such an impact so soon. The pullets have not hatched, and the added turkeys have not produced any noticeable crowding at all. Future designs may have to eliminate the table and throne to further restrict movement. I expect I will not have the leisure to write again until the tantrum spiral runs its course. With luck, some children may survive so that the project may continue. Given the state of the fort, writes Ollie Ollie, you may want to drop in some survival equipment if you haven't already. A pick may also help. If the corridors are flooded with vicious goblins, a pickaxe may greatly help Spartan 1 maneuver in the fort without running into them. But the good Dr. Monk disagrees. I do not think Spartan 1 will benefit from survival gear. She currently killed 2 turkey gobblers in a fit of rage and seriously injured a peacock. And more worryingly, she destroyed the nest box, table, and throne. Perhaps, more immediately, she's hurled her food about the chamber, and all of the booze is currently sharing the tile of her statues. I do not know if she can get it without destroying the statue first. The rest of the fort isn't faring much better. I've gone from 66 dwarves to 27, a fair portion of that being children, and the terminally insane. It's a pretty grisly scene here. Corpses and vomit. Kidnappers have made off with half a dozen children, and no adults can be bothered to care. The children are probably better off in the goblin slave pen. On the plus side, I think I can pull through. The good doctor is still sane, though a berserk herbalist broke his foot early in the spiral. Servish Trumpet Hearts, whose blood anoints Spartan 1. Servish Trumpet Hearts is quite content. His blood anoints Spartan 1. He has no friends, and the spiral has given him the excuse to take joy in the slaughter. He has been promoted to militia commander, and is serving as the chief medical dwarf until the doctor can get back on his foot. There's a couple of the younger children that are ecstatic, and that's about it. In the event this fortress falls, I'll start a new one, specifically to perform science, since I'm a stubborn bastard, and I'll hold on to the bitter end. Summer is nearing its close on the 1st of Glenna in the year 315, beyond the Pie. The tantrum spiral is finally over. The dwarves ran amok through the streets of Drunken Steels in the cold heart of winter, destroying and looting. The snow ran red with dwarven blood. At our lowest point, the fortress population consisted of 14 hale dwarves, in a varying states of misery, 6 children and 4 madmen. With the spring comes migrants, however, and we can rebuild. Servesh, the gilded monk of color, rose to the position of militia commander during the blood snow, by virtue of being alive and trained with a weapon. He maintained a small modicum of order by force, brutally executing those whose sanities slipped. He was instrumental in keeping the survivors fed and watered and clean when I was incapacitated with a mangled hand and foot. But he has no love for governance, and refused the nomination for the office of mayor. That position is currently filled by Olin Steak Ransack, the blacksmith and former lover of the Countess. It was Olin who ordered me to resume the work on the childcare project, though I'd rather help rebuild our city. Spartan 1 has survived the chaos somehow. She has destroyed much of her chamber in fits of rage, and scars on several animals bear testament to her wrath. Her chamber is soaked in blood and vomit. None of it is hers. She managed to wrench the door off of its hinges at some point, and Drunken Steels was spared her rampage solely due to the orthoclase plug. She destroyed the nest box, and so this chamber will have to be abandoned. In some small way, the coordinating has worked. She now is weak instead of very weak, and she has become a novice fighter, a skilled archer, thrower, as well as a dabbler in other martial arts. She is getting used to tragedy, though that is likely the result of civilization deaths outside the chamber. The turkeys and peahens were unable to do more than nick and bruise Spartan 1 during the blood snow, but in the aftermath, a ghostly farmer returned from the dead, attacking Spartan 1 in a violent rage, and she suffered the loss of her right arm at elbow. Somehow, she managed to staunch the blood loss and needs no further diagnosis or treatment. I have ordered coffins to be produced and mass to lay the ghost to rest and prevent further attacks. The work has begun on the next generation of chambers. This time, the design calls for neither a table nor throne. Reducing the floor space should increase the rate of conditioning. The chamber shall be opened to the air in order to prevent miasma from decaying turkey, and a well with soap will be provided. We shall see whether children will bathe of their own volition. Drunken Steels lives on, and the project continues. The artifact that Spartan had made earlier on was created by a strange mood. It was a possession, meaning she didn't gain any permanent skills from the artifact. In fact, it wasn't very exciting either. Mere things on the future unions. An oaken flute. Yeah. Spartan 1 was going to turn out to be some kind of useless elf-loving hauler before I snagged her for the childcare project. Hopefully, the year and a half of isolation and ghost attacks has purged any unwholesome tendencies from her. Actually, I'm fairly certain that I've traumatized her. Looking at her biography, she no longer has a good memory. I've never seen the soul attributes change, so this is an exciting new discovery for me. I can only assume that she is doing her best to block the last quarter of her life from her mind. Anywho, she won't be the first dwarf to serve in my military. With only one good arm, and assuming I make it that long, she won't be the last. I'm making 2 of the second round of chambers, one for Spartan 1, and another one for the youngest and hopefully friend-free child in the fortress. I'm fairly certain Spartan 1 has the mental fortitude to withstand the new chamber, and Spartan 2 will serve as something of a control. A bit of a pre-screening reveals that of the 8 children in Drunken Steels, 3 of them have dabbling combat skills from surviving the blood snow, and 1 other is hospitalized with Forgotten Beast rot. The Forgotten Beast rot is something of a minor epidemic, and it's delayed construction quite a bit. In particular, the CMD keeps catching it from his patients. CMD, of course, being the chief medical dwarf. I only just realized that he's been around long enough for his clothes to completely rot away, and so he keeps walking through pools of extract by the well. I'm making a VIP squad whose only purpose is to make VIPs wear shoes and gloves and the rest of the armor while I'm at it. Spartan 1 is once again very weak. The lack of constant attacks has allowed the subject to lapse into decadence. In a proper chamber, this should not happen, but thus far, all I've managed to do is give the subject dabbling combat skills and erode her memory. Spartan 1 is also on her last masterwork roast. Rather than restock the defunct chamber, I've elected to release Spartan 1, pending the completion of a new chamber. Work on that chamber remains slow due to the Forgotten Beast extract flare-ups and goblin ambushes cutting into our workforce. I've treated the wounded. I know the state of the military. We are losing this war. Hopefully some new migrants will arrive to bolster our forces. A large amount of time has passed in the thread. Girl in Hat, the creator of the thread, has finally returned. It is now December 29th, 2011, and we are nearing the new year. And she enters with a grim statement. A patriot has offered her child. Kogan Logem Makal is 1 year old and has been sequestered into a small room that has been told contains ponies, sunshine, and rainbows. It does not. It contains 1 bed, 1 food pile, an emphasis on pile, and 1 nest box. Said nest box is going to be occupied by a young turkey, but was taken up by a mere guinea hen. This has been allowed as there is insufficient food for the child. This will be a mere test run to ascertain the damage a small bird can perform on an infant child. May Armok forsake this fortress, for I fear his wrath should he observe too closely. Worthy of note, after 14 months, give or take, I wasn't paying attention. So much strawberry wine to occupy my time. Sorry, what? No. Yes. After some amount of time, the child has become a novice in dodging and is being fed entirely on the proceeds from various caravans. This is a very good sign. The child enjoys cheese, and if he doesn't enjoy cheese, he'll eat it anyways. We have a lot of cheese. He has also become a hardened individual and moved from fat to corpulent, likely due to the cheese. Unfortunately, his intellect, something he did have in his favor, has wasted away. Presumably his time spent calmly dodging turkey chick breaks has grown on him, and he has learned not to think very hard. This is currently in debate, but the others seem to consider this favorable. But we didn't follow his actions for some time, and after discussing this topic for a bit, we returned to our chambers. That next morning, we discovered the child dead, not as was assumed to infection, not to depression or insanity either, nor the lack of food. In fact, a stray poult, a baby turkey, scratched him with her first toe on his right foot, and somehow the force shattered his skull and bruised his brain. Science has been performed, a life has been taken, and another year rolls past the fortress. We set the grave and move out the uneaten food, to be moved into the next child's cell, for our science shall resume. And with that, friends, we begin our final round of experiments, at least those that are documented in great detail. Rudith the Baywatcher has his reports. The dwarven scientist girl in hat walked up the row of caves, sealed off from the rest of the fort. Project Childcare has been in operation in our fortress now for just on 10 years, and it was the most top-secret experiment ever conducted in the history of all dwarven kind. The only dwarves who knew about the experiment were Dr. Girl Inat, the overseer of the products, and finally, the aides, handpicked by Girl in Hat for their secrecy and skill with science. Never before had this project been attempted. The aim of Project Childcare was to create blighted super soldiers, as Girl in Hat thought of them. It was all coming to fruition. Project Childcare moved in roughly 10-year cycles. The experiment involved rabid dogs, food hatches, and controlled amounts of magma mist. Girl in Hat had come up with the plan to make invulnerable mad soldiers, after examining many dwarven medical textbooks, that fire only hurt dwarves because the fat in their body boiled. Without fat, they would not burn. 12 straight years of dodging the attacks of rabid dogs aimed to give the subjects reflexes like none other, and massive amounts of strength to boot. Subject 1A, a young male dwarf, had been the first to enter. Over the 10 years, he had shown vast improvements in agility, strength, and mental toughness, until he abruptly died at the age of 7 from an infection contracted from a broken toenail. Subject 1B, 1A's sister, in fact, similar age to him, had progressed well until the controlled magma scorching was not controlled enough. So she died. Subject 2A, a male dwarf who entered rather late, had shown next to no improvement, until with an accidental strike he killed his dog. A second dog was released into the chamber via the pit method, which was killed in one strike. 2A continued to single strike his opponents until the dog population was nearly exhausted, so 2A was deemed a failure and the chamber was reset. Subjects 3A through 3F were chosen for their beginning strength, which was noted to be immense for young dwarves. However, a potential liability was noticed in the dwarves. All subjects 3A through 3F were mentally unstable, and all but 3C went mad in the first year. 3E was inspired by his trials to create a powerful artifact, and duly noted materials were thrown at him through the pit method by the aides. However, 3E's mind broke under the strain, and he killed his dog, and then elected to ignore the food and drink passed down to him. 3C survived a little longer, and after repeated killings of his dogs, he seemed to be unaffected by his tantrums, and it was deemed that a stronger animal must be sent in to challenge 3C, and he was given a war dog as a foe. Unfortunately, it was too strong and defeated him. Subjects 4A through 3E died on the first day, as they knew each other and could feel the deaths of others. This affected them so strongly that their minds broke and they died after 4D was killed by her dog. And finally, Subject 5A, Subject 6A, and 7A, 7B, 8A, and 9A were the surviving test subjects. They had shown steady growth and the expected mental hardening that Dr. Inat had predicted, and were almost ready to be released to the fort. They were impressive, almost never speaking, except for grunts of pain that accompanied a dodge that failed. Strong, bound, and wrapped with masses of muscle. All muscle around their bodies that made them much taller and heftier than the average dwarf. Agile despite their huge frames, they moved with grace of the elves, and a speed never seen among land creatures. And finally, their blackened skill that suggested no fat deemed them perfect for fighting those of the deep and unwinged dragons. There had been so many trials, blood, sweat, and tears in the creation of this experiment. A mayor managed to find out what had been going on until Dr. Inhat pursued the Baroness to mandate a slayed object. The mayor could not comply, and though Inhat's needlings, the Baroness declared the mayor to be killed through hammering. One of Dr. Inhat's aides could take the experiment no longer, and intended to leave and write a book on what he saw. Of course, that could not happen. He had to be silenced, so Inhat and her team convinced him to spend a day in the cool-off chamber, a self-therapy center. If any of Inhat's team should feel pained, they may spend time there to calm down. It featured the latest dwarven psychotherapy, such as platinum statues hauled halfway across the continent, and the finest wine and food made by the fort's legendary cooks. Jurist Imek Nuris. Not only that, but the floors had been engraved by the finest engravers under the pretense of a new room for the notoriously cranky Baroness. And finally, a bed made by one who had been influenced by one of the aides, and as was said, was directed to spend time in the cool-off chamber. And so, of course, he did. Afterwards, he came out feeling much better. But Inhat assigned another aide to make sure that he could only work on the experiment. Finally, they were ready. 10 long years had passed, and the remaining test subjects were completely ready to take up arms and defend the fortress as blighted soldiers, immune to fire, imbued by holy strength. Minds of steel and no soul, they could kill and kill and kill without tiring, all in the name of the fort. The animal opponents were recaptured, the magma mist chambers were sealed, and finally, the once were dwarves were released. Time for a practical test. One by one, newly adult, blighted soldiers moved from their chambers into a slightly designed arena. Inside was a goblin prisoner. He had been made very, very aware that his freedom depended on this fight. Inhat had also given the prisoners their own armor and weapons, crafted from dwarven steel. After all, dwarves aren't cruel. Subject 5A was the first to fully outfit himself. The gate was released, and 5A leapt onto the hapless prisoner. Once a mace lord, 5A gutted him with his bare hands in a matter of half a second. But 6A and 7B were initially hesitant to kill, instead preferring to maim. This was all right in Inhat's eyes. This meant that they would strike far more fear into their opponents that survived in the future, if any. 6A decided to end it by biting the goblin prisoner's head off, leaving it stuck in her teeth. 7B preferred to batter the dying opponent with his own armor. Ensuing his own weapons, he simply tore the goblin's armor off and beat him with it. 7A accidentally crushed the gate, holding back the second test, and the two goblins, both elite lashers, managed to knock him unconscious, but could not kill him. All 6 soldiers working alone, with the exception of 8A and 9A, defeated their rocky opponents in less than a minute, sustaining no injuries. And finally, as a last dressing down before being sent to their sealed barracks, 8A and 9A were doused with a numbing liquid to prevent pain in combat, as a final experiment. It now remained to be seen how the subjects would perform in an open warfare situation. But the key was, no civilians should see the blighted soldiers, and perhaps in the future, Dr. Inhat thought, the wounded and useless blighted soldiers could be induced to breed, creating a new race of super hardy dwarves. It had been a good experiment and an incredible success.